And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
Hey, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Boy, we are loaded up. Guess what? Nico Iamaleava may be a topic. Caleb, do you think that'll come up?
Who is that guy?
And that why do we keep talking about that UCLA quarterback? He seems to be a topic of conversation. So, Caleb, first of all, how are you, sir? I far too often forget to ask you how you are doing. How are you, sir?
I am good. Happy Friday, Dave.
Yeah, happy Good Friday as well to all of those out there. Don't forget the reason for this day, and we certainly appreciate all those that are part of the program. As we get off and rolling, we have a lot to talk about today, and that includes some Nico talk, as you might imagine. Also, Josh Heupel's track record of missing on quarterbacks that he's actually brought in. So you might say Hendon Hooker immediately. Well, he didn't bring in Hendon Hooker. Is Nico the most disappointing UT recruit in its history? Quite possibly. We'll kick around some names this day in Tennessee sports history. Should the Vols shoot for a big name in the portal? I'm sick of this whole go get somebody that's just okay and has been decent. I'm more along the lines of why not make a splash? You've got some money to spend all of a sudden. And people think I'm crazy. I've already been ripped, but if I'm Nico, and I say this somewhat in jest, I'm skipping UCLA and just preparing for the NFL draft. Why not? Stat of the day as well. Rules changes coming to college football will definitely help Tennessee, and I'm going to tell you why. And then Lane Kiffin on Theo Vaughn. You talk about a couple of cats that I thought would have absolutely nothing in common. It would be those two guys. But it was a pretty interesting watch. Theo Vaughn, a popular podcaster with the kids. So that's why I'm sure that Lane Kiffin decided to do that show with Theo Vaughn. We bring in Will West from the Sports Animal, 3 to 7. He's fantastic. Last time we were on this show, Will, all heck was breaking loose.
It was. I know. So it was nice that people responded to this show with their statements of it wasn't us. But so and I still don't know who leaked out that original On3 report. I know, and here's the thing. You get it from people who should know, but then you also, in these types of situations, have to worry about who has an agenda that they want spread out there because maybe people have beef with Spire independent of the situation. And so I still don't know exactly what happened. I know what a lot of people are saying. People who said Spire leaked it at first. The Spire says they didn't leak it. And at the end of the day, it kind of is what it is.
It is. My hunch is, and then we're going to get to some specific topics. My hunch is somebody actually within the football department leaked it. I may be in the minority there. I've just got a feeling they were a little sick of it, thought they could force a hand. I would think that Spire Sports would know enough about PR not to force that hand because that was the exact wrong play to make. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I want to tell you that's why they're all the other stuff is PR spin, and Tennessee's super good at it, and Nico's camp super bad at it. So we're all watching that play out real time over the last week too. The reason they left was because of the On3 report. Everybody got in a big urinating contest. Nico and his family, ghosted. And depending on who you talk to, Nico called Joey Halsey, or he didn't call Joey Halsey, or he called Joey Halsey too late. The only two people I know that know both Nico's camp and Tennessee's side both said, look, if it was Nico, he'd have called Joey Halsey. They're all tight. And he's a respectful kid. Big Nick would absolutely just leave and ghost and say, we're out. And so that's kind of, and I understand both sides of that, but I would say, look, just point blank, if that On3 report doesn't come out and whoever leaked it, none of this happens. Nico's still Tennessee's QB. Tennessee still has a QB, and none of this happens. And Big Nick would be a problem behind the scenes, and he's somebody else's problem. And honestly, Heupel wouldn't deal with him a lot, and Denny White wouldn't deal with him a lot, and Alicia wouldn't deal with him a lot, and nobody on that side of things would deal with him. It'd be the people in the stadium and stuff like that that just deal with the annoyance of him. But that's it. I mean, that's what happened is hurt feelings, and we are where we are.
You mentioned Halsey's name. Let's zero in on that for a second. Because when Nico signed with Tennessee, he had an Alex Golish that proved he could put an incredible offense on the field in 2022. That turned Hendon Hooker into an NFL prospect. He may never play, but he is an NFL prospect. Jalen Hyatt into an NFL prospect, which I wouldn't have thought would have been the case before 2022, but he did do that. So my question is, with the change from Golish to Halsey a couple of years ago, is it anywhere close to the mark based off what you've heard, what I've been told, and I'll share my thoughts with you, that Nico left partly because he didn't trust Joey Halsey to get him ready for the NFL? Is that a fair or unfair statement?
That is an accurate statement. And so that's part of it. Like, I think the other side of it is they wanted more help too. Because, like, why didn't you go get one more offensive lineman? Why didn't you get one more receiver? Those of us close to it, we can look at it. I mean, we've all done this a bit. It's Tennessee. The winter window is when you go get new players. The spring window is when you re-up your guys. And then Boo Carter wants more money. And then Mike Matthews wants more money. And then you had to pay David Sanders $700,000 more than anybody else was going to pay David Sanders. And all of a sudden, you don't have the same level of money. So I do think Tennessee had planned to be active in the spring window, and they just were on like a reverse schedule because of the dudes who, Ricky Gibson, the dudes who needed more money now, or they were going to leave in the window. Tennessee kind of got flip-flopped on which window was when they were doing what. It's not unfair. So the one thing the family has always said is that that we wanted help. They have said since it's the system, and I believe that. I believe they believe that. It doesn't mean the system's the problem. But at the end of the day, I think the system, and again, it's not Josh Heupel's system, and Josh Heupel's system's an evolved version of the Art Briles system. And it's the Art Briles system has never made a starting quarterback in the NFL. It hasn't. Now it gets guys drafted, and they have a look at it. And so I would say you knew what the system was when you got here, dude. But I do think there's a question about whether Joey Halls. I can tell you I feel very comfortable saying that I know. The family did not trust Joey Halsey to get Nico ready, whether they're right or wrong.
All right. Today's tough question. Let's dive into that. And then if you can follow up, Caleb, with some thoughts on Halsey, because I want to focus on that mainly. But before the end of this segment, I want to get the blame pie, so to speak, as Will sees it. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney.
All right, Caleb. So jump in there. We'll play a little blame pie, but let's focus on Halsey for a moment, if we can.
Okay. I'll do blame pie and I'll focus on Halsey, but well, I mean, I just have to ask this question because look, I have to be honest, because what you're telling me, I'm not saying is wrong. I totally believe you, and I totally believe everybody that's reported that. But the thing that's hard for me is the Nico team not saying this publicly until yesterday. What is it, like 5 days after this all blew up in everybody's face and the reports were out there that it was about money? They let that report sit for like 5 days that they left over money, basically. And then they come to Front Office Sports and say it was about the system. And if it's about the offense and about the system, and if it's about Joey Halsey specifically, why would they then transfer to a school with a first-year offensive coordinator who's never called a play in his life, and a head coach who himself was never a coordinator before he was a head coach? I mean, they may not like this system, but didn't they go to a school that literally has no offensive system at that point?
Well, they're going to run a modified, like what Saban ran at Alabama is what they're going to run. The Sark system. It's it's Kurt Signetti, what they did. There was a modified version of the Sark system. That's what they're going to run. They believe, and again, just because somebody's stupid doesn't mean they're lying. Does that make sense? Okay. So I believe that they believe it, if that makes sense. So, and I will tell you without question, I know the family has told people Nico has told people that the family didn't trust Joey Halsey to get him ready, and they didn't trust the system, and they wanted the system changed. Now, that alone would be enough that I would say that, and also just because you say it doesn't mean, and you shouldn't have said it doesn't mean it's not true. That system we watched last year, people go to the 3 safety shell, they didn't have a lot of answers, right? Especially in the passing game. And so I think the system needs to be evolved. I think Jeff Levy's already shown us how you can evolve that system when he was at Ole Miss, by putting it in the pistol, by rolling guys out and getting some waggle, by levels concepts, things like that. And so I think you bring in Seth Littrell to evolve that system the way that Seth Littrell did and Jeff Levy did. But I do think that they believed it, but just because they believe it doesn't mean it's accurate. But sometimes people just don't know what the heck they're talking about. So I will tell you, they have told people that they are friends with here that it was about the system and it was about not trusting Joey Halsey to have Nico ready for the NFL. I would counter with that by saying, is Josh Heupel's not John Calipari. His job's not to get Nico to the NFL and make him an NFL-ready quarterback. His job's to win games. And along that way, you also want to develop the quarterback. It ain't like what Josh Heupel and Joey Halsey did last year, and it didn't work. You went to the playoff. Nobody expected to go to the playoff. Outside of GBO, that was the only argument you could make for them going to the playoff. And the problem last year, part of the problem with the offense, I thought, was Nico. He wasn't ready. He was more ready than Arch was last year. He was more ready than Jackson Arnold was last year, guys from his class. But he still was clearly underdeveloped, and you can usually tell that. One thing, like I did a show with Bobby Scott for 18 years. That dude Bobby did a dozen years in the NFL, and he always pointed this out. If they throw in the middle of the field, they ain't ready. If that's where they're real comfortable, if they're not comfortable throwing outside, they're comfortable throwing in the middle of the field, they ain't ready. And there were times Chris Brazzell was one-on-one down the sideline, and everybody's like, oh, Chris Brazzell sucks. If Nico knows to throw the ball up to him when he sees him one-on-one breaking away and let Chris Brazzell go make a play, you don't have the problems with Chris Brazzell last year. Nico was a young quarterback who needed to be scot-free open like he was it in a game of freeze tag, or Nico wasn't going to throw him the ball. So all of these things to me, and that's the hard part, is I think the first takeification of sports, nobody, like, all of these things can be true at the same time, or people can believe it even if those people are wrong. So that's kind of the way I look at all of this. Is I can tell you without question the family believed, Nico believed, Joey Halsey couldn't get him ready, and that the system was going to be a problem for them to get to the NFL.
Yeah, and I want to go to a comment here in the message board. Donnie says, bull stuff. If Nico got $4 million, he would still be here. Do you think that would have been the solve, SALVE, that would have kept him here and happy? Because you are talking about getting to the point of being financially independent for the rest of your life, no matter what happens in the NFL.
I don't know. I will tell you, the family has said over and over again that's their side, has said over and over again, it wasn't about the money. We wanted help. We wanted the system changes. At the same time, human nature, it makes it hard for me to believe, were they really okay with Nico making $1 million less than Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway? Really? Right? Like, and did Tennessee say, we want you to play on your old contract, and you're the one quarterback in America that needs to play on a 3-year-old deal? Really? Did that happen? No, it did. Neither of those things happened. So human nature makes me think they were negotiating a deal, the demand and they would have gotten past the finish line. I don't know that 4 was the number that anybody expected to land on, but it's not an unreasonable ask right now. Again, Lagway's making 3.5, Sellers making 3.5, Nussmeier's making 3.5. But if you ask for 4 and land at 3.5, I think everybody's happy and you move on from there, or even at 3 and change. I get Tennessee maybe wanting. I think Tennessee struggled financially a lot more than they want anybody to believe when it comes to what their NIL situation is, and I don't know that they had 3.5. An extra $1 million for that. Or if they did, they didn't have the money to then bring the help Nico's team wanted. And so that's a little bit of a problem. But Nico's team has said repeatedly, we didn't ask for more money. I just find that impossible to believe, because that's not human nature. And also, that really seems to be a motivator for them. So why would they be okay with their kid making $1 million less than the rest of the SEC starting quarterbacks?
Great.
So, Will, to your point, and I want to zone in on this a little bit, because it's kind of a two-parter question here, but you talked about them not trusting Joey Halsey. I get that, because you talked about Jeff Levy, who was actually, funny enough, Heupel's offensive coordinator at UCF for a while. Then there's Alex Golish. We talked about both of them have minds of their own, so they throw wrinkles in the offense, whereas Halsey just seems like a clone of, like, just doing whatever Heupel tells him to do, pretty much. But at the same time, I got to ask, didn't they kowtow to some of the demands from Nico's team, just from the I mean, we know they wanted more help. Well, they did go and add 2 offensive linemen in the winter portal. And you pointed out, they brought in Seth Littrell to tweak the offense. And didn't they install elements of the pistol in spring practice? So they're saying it was about the offense. Well, weren't they catering to Nico to a certain degree with that?
100%. And I wouldn't have done that, right? And like, I would have done whatever changes I need to win games. I wouldn't have done that. I mean, again, what got RG3 right out of the league? These plays are unacceptable. Door's right there. You know what I mean? Like, no. You know what the system was when you got here. You don't want to be here. Don't. I think Tennessee was willing to do that to some extent, probably more than I would have been able to. Part of it's because I think Josh Heupel's he's smart, man. Like, he knows, hey, okay, I've got to evolve my offense because Brent Venables broke it. So, like, he showed everybody how to stop that. So I have to have another wrinkle. I do think they did acquiesce, but part of it is I think they were already doing that to some extent. Look, at the end of the day, I think this was a urinating contest. I think this was a high school breakup, not a dissolving of a business partnership. I think if that doesn't hit on 3, then Nico and the thing. Okay, let me just. I know your show, guys. I don't mean to do this, but I'm going to do this. Have you ever heard of a school that dissolved a relationship with a player that didn't say we dissolved a relationship with a player? Like, if they dismissed Nico from the team, or any player's ever been dismissed from the team and it wasn't brought up that happened, Tennessee's not said that. They just said we're moving on. Which, here's what I believe based on people I've talked to is Nico no calls, no shows to practice. Tennessee says, all right, it's over, because we've been asking him, are you going to re-up your contract or not? He couldn't give us an answer. Nico's team no called, no showed because they were going to transfer. And then Nico reached out later that day and said, I'm going to transfer. That's what I believe happened. And everything else is PR, and Tennessee's awesome at it. And Nico's camp's awful at it. And the rest is all just spin. But if Tennessee dismissed Nico from the team, they'd have said we dismissed Nico from the team. They didn't say those words. They just it went from we're moving on to now it's and I will say the things that have come out since Wednesday are the things that I think are actually true, which is we mutually agreed to part ways. And how they mutually agreed was Nico's camp ghosted, and Tennessee said, oh, well, and we're good moving on. And then they leaked stuff out there or put a statement out through Chris Lowe, and that burned the bridge completely so that they couldn't come back.
I have an odd conspiracy theory that I threw out yesterday, but I want to get Will's take. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. All right, Will, feel free to laugh at me. A lot of people made fun of me yesterday. But if I were, and the way you said it, moved on, I'm not 100% ruling out that Nico couldn't like things at UCLA, that the money's not there, that it's the same system, and he couldn't come crawling back to Tennessee.
I don't think you could now. I think Tennessee made sure they couldn't do that when they said that to Chris Lowe, because Chris Lowe's word's good as gold, right? So I think that when they put, like, everybody got mad at me because when the Lowe statement came out, a quote tweeted and said, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen a school nuke a kid like this." Like, that's not something you do. You guys have done this. We work under contracts. If my employer, and again, I don't necessarily have that big of a problem with Tennessee doing it. I'm not going to lie and act like it's not this. So one way or the other, I feel like we're beholden to the audience, not Tennessee, not Nico. So I'm going to try to the best of my ability, tell the truth. I've done 20 contract negotiations over the years. There are times, there was one years ago, if anybody remembers, long enough ago, I used to do work with another media outlet on top of the sports animal. And they wanted me to no longer go on anybody else's show besides the radio show. And I said, well, then you're going to have to pay me a retainer. So it gets kicked up to corporate. They said we spend 2 weeks arguing about it. We decide to part ways, and it doesn't. They're not going to come off the retainer, and I'm not going to say, no, I'm not doing John Pennington's show without you giving me a retainer. So it's no big deal. Walked away. If they would have leaked out to the press something of we've parted ways with Will West because he wanted a retainer and we didn't blink, I would have turned them into the SEC for some questionable accounting practices I knew about. I would go nuts. I have never ever, under any circumstance, heard of any organization doing that in a contract negotiation, ever. Tennessee burned the bridge. They're not stupid. They knew they burned the bridge. And so I don't think there's a way to come back from this now by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, something you go ahead, Caleb.
Sorry, I just want to wrap this up with one other thing too, though, because if we're talking about the offense, well, and we had Jimmy Hyams on Wednesday, and he brought up a point that I kind of am starting to agree with. I mean, in the 90s with Peyton Manning and Danny Werfel, we kind of got this idea of, David Cutcliffe developed Manning, where Steve Spurrier had Danny Werfel put up video game numbers, and that's why Peyton Manning was more ready for the NFL. But Hyams brought up, like, now, because you bring up the offensive preparing people for the NFL, but the best quarterback in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes, who certainly did not play in an NFL pro-style offense in college. Isn't it much more now with how the NFL has evolved? Isn't it really just about how good you are, and it doesn't really matter how much the college offense developed you for the pros?
I agree. I completely agree with that. They're going to give you a shot. Now, you have to question why 2 years later, Hendon Hooker's coaches are still saying he's got to learn the offense, right? And Bryce Petty, the Bryce Petty situation, again, this isn't a Heupel thing. This is a Levy thing, or this is a Bryles thing. Bryce Petty gets drafted by the Jets, and second round pick, third round pick, something like that. And everybody in New York, I am a fan of Mike and the Mad Dog growing up, and I would work middays, and then I'd go pick my daughter up, and I'd stream Mike and the Mad Dog while I was driving to pick my daughter up and sitting in the school line. And all these Jets reporters are coming on saying, he's asking about Bryce Petty, like, he doesn't know how to play football. He knows how to play He knows how to play quarterback in that system. He does not know how to play quarterback as a whole. Now, think about this, though. Everyone said the same thing about Gus Malzahn. How many Gus Malzahn quarterbacks didn't work? Cam Newton worked. If you're good enough, you're good enough, like at the end of the day. So do I think it's the ideal situation to tutor you for the pro as far as translatable skills? No. But if you're good enough, you're good enough at the end of the day.
Will, you're good. I'm going to completely change directions and gears off of what I texted you this morning. So let's go ahead and do this, because you've made a couple of references to the NIL, that Tennessee might not have as money as we first believed. They were the pioneers of NFL. They were Lewis and Clark. They went across the great United States of NIL and they changed things. But now they have Ricky Gibson III jumping in. I think Boo Carter asked for more money. Mike Matthews, Nico as well. And now you have Christian Charles entering the transfer portal. But I'm not saying that it cost them Nico, the fact that they might be short on cash, but let me just ask the question. Could they be short on cash?
Shortish, right? I don't think Tennessee's but look, everyone in the SEC's behind except Texas, right? Everyone in the SEC's behind the Big Ten. The problem is this. There were dudes who back in the day would not give money to bagmen to go get players. But when it's on the up and up, and I'm donating to a nonprofit foundation, all of a sudden Michigan having the fourth wealthiest man in America that is, his wife's an alum, and that matters. Not in America, the world. Literally the founder of Oracle is dumping money into Michigan like crazy. The SEC schools have had smaller enrollment numbers over the last 30 years. So when it comes to Ohio State, who's had 50 to 70,000 students for as long as I've been alive, they can get $10, ahead from a bunch of students and make money off of that. The Big Ten schools have a different level of money than the other schools have. I don't think Tennessee's not remotely in the elite category when it comes to money, but Tennessee's not abjectly far behind. They overpaid for a few dudes. I think they overpaid for Matthews. I think they overpaid for Sanders and things like that. They overpaid for Lance Hurd. But I think that they're okay with money, but right now, short term, they're in trouble. Another problem is Tennessee's boosters are all old, and they don't understand. They don't understand that, hey, this is the way of doing business, and they don't like it. It's one of the reasons the Lady Vols fell off is they didn't want – there were a lot of boosters for the Lady Vol program that thought, it's Pat Summitt's program. You should be proud to wear the orange, and we're not going to pay players to come here. Next thing you know, you got to pay Rakia Jackson $750,000 if you want to keep her. So, and now all of a sudden they have and for all the criticisms everyone has for Spire, when Spire got involved with the Lady Vol Booster Club, Tennessee has 6 of the top 50 players now, right? So right after that happened. So it's pay for play. It's pro sports. It is what it is. And it doesn't mean you can't still develop a relationship where that guy is loyal to the program, but you're also going to have to pay him. I'm loyal to my company. They're also going to have to pay me, point blank. That's what it's going to be at the end of the day because it's my job. But I don't think Tennessee's in a bad position, but they're definitely not in a great position. Look, Texas has a different level of money. Ohio State has a different level of money. Michigan Penn State, they have a different level of money. And so while Tennessee's okay, Tennessee's not in the elite category when it comes to how much money they have to throw around there.
Yeah, Caleb, I want you to jump in here, but I want to make a quick. I don't know where the delineation is. If it's 65 years old or if it's you make over $1 million, but there are a group of fans that hated the talent fee thing that went with season tickets, and then there's another group that said, "Yay, more NIL money, doing the right thing." And Caleb, those are two very different groups.
They are very different groups, but it's not just an age thing. And first, because you mentioned, yes, Christian Charles is in the transfer portal. I'll just say up front, I don't think that has anything to do with NIL money. That's playing time. Christian Charles has been at Tennessee for 4 years. You're going to have players into the spring portal. Yeah. He hasn't started. However,
he's a smart kid who wants to go get as much education he can on somebody else's dime and play football while he does it. So that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. However, Will, I have to bring this up. And Dave and I had debated this for a while. And Dave, I have to say, I think I'm kind of being proven right on you for this, which is that I've maintained for a long time that the gap in the contracts the SEC and the Big Ten signed in TV deals was going to have a huge impact on the NIL market when they went into play. We're entering the second year of those two contracts this year. I mean, what you just talked about with the Big Ten money, that gap's only going to grow, right? Because the Big Ten is raking in $1 billion a year.
Yep. And look, and it's part of that. The other part of it is a lot of the boosters are aged out. There was the banker who was the big Auburn booster forever that got sold to a publicly traded company. And so all of a sudden the family doesn't have that kind of money. There's also a difference in, like, Dave and I are about the same age. My dad would have absolutely, if he was a billionaire, put money into the program and been important and paid to run through the T and all that stuff. I'm not doing any of that, man. Like, I just don't get, I don't care enough about that. I don't need to walk around a locker room handshaking people with $100 bills to feel important, right? That's just not something our generation values. So, and then you get to, Caleb, I'm assuming you're a millennial, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Millennial generation, even less. Gen Z, even less. I've said this for a while that college football needed to change the revenue stream quickly because I know I have a few friends. You do this a long time, and we do a lot of stuff on nonprofits. You meet people who are very, very wealthy people. What they're going to do is buy a box, and that's it. And I bought my box, and if I'm not using my plan and you want to use my plan, cool. Other than that, I'm not giving you a bunch of money to pay some kid, especially really smart business people understand that the business model of NIL and collectives and all that is abjectly broken. No one except those big, big, big schools are actually making their payments on time. Olivia Dunn said she didn't get paid on time by LSU. Caleb Williams didn't get paid on time by USC. They were behind all the time with them and never really caught back up. It's like you're signing these kids NIL deals. You're doing nothing to recoup your investment because the collectives involved have no idea how to price marketing, or they know about as much about marketing as I do about hanging drywall. So it's a broken system. And if you're a good business person, you're going to look at this and say, you want me to throw money in the street so we can win football games. That's what you want me to do. You have a business in place that doesn't do business, and you just want me to hand millions upon millions of dollars over for kids to play football. Look at college basketball right now. And this is all buried because of the Nico thing. Last year, the top schools were paying $5 million for a roster for college basketball. This year, there are at least a dozen schools that are paying more than $10 million. That's how fast this is moving and how quickly. And who's recouping investment? Like, how many commercials have you watched with Tennessee football players or basketball players in it? Zakai with the bed store, because Roger's good. Roger came up with that himself, and it's a good one. And then you saw Brew on a couple things, and then you did again. So there just aren't very many people don't recoup investment. And if you're a good business person, you're going to look at this and say, this is the stupidest way to run a business in the history of sports. Why are you doing this way? And the reason why is because that's the system now, and no one's going to buck it and change it.
Dalton was on Salsaritas, which made me think they gave out sedatives with their chips and salsa because he was just a little too laid back on that thing. But okay, well, let me ask you this then, big picture. Not about Nico, not about Christian Charles, not about any of these. Can Tennessee win long-term, win championships? Because we've already seen the Big Ten take over to some extent. If there's not some sort of salary cap that prevents schools like Ohio State and Michigan that may have more of a donor base to spend as much as they want.
No, and look, they're going to put this like on the house settlement's going to start in July, and so what's going to happen is it's $20.5 million, and they said it was 22. Now they're saying it's 20.5, and 15.4 million is going to most football programs, and so everyone in America has been negotiating over the last few weeks of players want 26% of the 15.4 million, and because that's what Dak Prescott makes against the salary cap of the Dallas Cowboys, and that's what quarterbacks are looking to get right now, and so that would put them at what? A little under $4 million, right? So that's where it would land them. That's the number everybody's looking for right now. So it's going to get sued into oblivion. It's not actually going to happen. They're trying to put an illegal salary cap in. They're praying to God that Congress comes and bails them out and saves them. Tuberville and people like that are trying to. There was a legitimate bill that would have saved this, and honestly, it was Tommy Tuberville and Joe Manchin. So both sides of the aisle destroyed it by putting stupid things in it no one's ever going to vote for. And they're looking for Congress to come bail them out and let them run what is right now an illegal cartel. It is the literal definition of a cartel, and no one's coming to help you. No one's coming to save you. So I don't know what, like, it was Brett Kavanaugh that is the one that said, nope, you got to pay, players can get money and there's nothing you can do about it. So you have a MAGA judge and Democrats on the other side. You really think they're going to say, hey, multimillionaires, you get to keep making your money and you don't have to pay the kids? They're not doing that. So you have neither side's coming to save you, and that's what they're holding out for. The only solution's the thing Nick Saban said 2 summers ago. And when Nick said it, I thought, man, that's a little premature, isn't it? I didn't know all this was coming, and clearly Nick Saban did. The only way to do it is to go the NFL model. You make them employees. You collectively bargain. What that means is 45% or more of the revenue base is going to the players, and it means you're shuttering a lot of sports, and they become intramural. And that's how you do this, and you have real enforceable contracts that are out there. There's no other solution to this, but they don't want to do it. And this is what Danny White last year at the SEC meetings. Whatever we're going to, let's just go to it fast. They're doing the opposite of that, and it's a really, 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 it's a really bad system that they have set up, and they clearly don't care to fix it with something that is actually going to stick.
Well, there's another layer to this, though, because even if you do the salary cap and you have the schools directly paying players, and even if they were to solve this, there is no way you could ever regulate quote-unquote endorsements players could get from businesses, because, I mean, you can't regulate that in the NFL. You certainly can't regulate that in college, and that money kind of all is going into a pot. So with that in mind, and with the Big Ten contract in mind, given the fact that I don't see any possible way for the SEC to catch up to the Big Ten, could this end up destroying Greg Sankey's legacy, signing that contract with ESPN and then getting fleeced by the Big Ten 3 years later?
I don't know about destroy, because it seems like everything in college happens super slow, right? So I don't think it's going to destroy the legacy. I do think he's slow right now. I do think it chips away at his legacy a little bit, because think about what we all done to Greg Sankey coming out of COVID. Man, like, that guy, leader of college football. Look at this guy. Now you look at it, he's made some dumb decisions. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to make a dumb decision today. So I'm not saying he should be fired or anything, but that ESPN contract was a bad decision. Trying to go to 9 games without having the backing, thinking you could force that through by pressuring your presidents, and what they're going to eat $4 million a year in revenue. No, they're not. You know what I mean? Why would you think that's going to happen just because you want this? They're not doing that. So he's made some bad decisions. It will chip away at it. And one thing that we have to all remember when we talk about this, because the SEC is still making a lot of money, they're closer to what the Big 12 is making than what they are what the Big 10's making. Exactly. So that's the neighborhood you're shopping in, and also they have the Big 10 schools have larger alumni bases, and also they have just exponentially more millionaires and billionaires that are alumnus of the Big 10 schools than the SEC schools. They've
got the last 2 national champions for a reason.
Yeah. And here's the other thing to remember too. Now, this isn't specifically with the Big 10 or the SEC per se, but the other thing to remember, Will, I'm going to let you out of here with this, is that the football powers are still going to be the football powers, because they're going to have businesses that do see value in being associated with athletes. So they're going to spend NIL money. Pay-per-play and NIL are going to be 2 different numbers. And I still think ultimately the football powers that are in place now will continue to be that, whether it's Big Ten or SEC.
I think there's some look at because part of that's the demand, right? Like Tennessee loses Bruce Pearl, the fan base held the administration accountable to make sure basketball didn't fall back to where it was under Doug Dickey. And so that's part of it, is that Tennessee's fans will always demand that Tennessee is going to be a big-time program. There are other places that, and the same way it worked with Nebraska, I think there are other schools that are big-time power programs that they will absolutely slip away because of the money situation, because they straight up don't have it. I think there are other schools that will step up. In the Bagman era, Louisville all of a sudden got really good. All of a sudden are pretty good all of a sudden when they've never been good about football, but it's because they had certain corporate partners that were super okay with working the Bagman game. And so they got better. And so I think you're going to see, for the most part, most of the powers will stay powers. Some will fall. Some others that are SMU. SMU could absolutely rise and become a power again because they have money, right? They have oil money. And so that could be a school that takes a step and takes a leap up. They're not complaining about what the ACC is making. Florida State and Clemson are, because they don't have any money. So but SMU's boosters are willing to make sure that they're good, and their fans are willing to make sure that they're good. That's what it will come down to at the end of the day is, do you have the cash? Because that's what it's going to be. And the NIL side's tough with this, because I mentioned this to you off the air, Dave, but I'm going to bring it on the air. And sorry if I'm not supposed to do that. I literally don't know a human being but you who's made money off of NIL. And I've had everybody else lost their backside.
I did pretty well.
Like, that's real. Everyone else literally was a net negative. I don't know another human being. I know a couple that did female athletes, because female athletes show up to things, and that worked for them. But anybody else with a Moonshine Mountain cookie, like Mike, that worked for them, right? But they had a really good program that they put together. I don't think the Bed Store made any money, but I don't think they lost any money on the Zakai thing. Maybe they made a little bit. For the most part, you lose money on these NIL deals. And are you willing to? And the reason why is it's priced so stupid. Like, I mean, we price what advertising and marketing costs are. It's so dumb. Like, you want Nico to come to your event, $65,000. Like, I know one guy that runs a business in town that is an alumnus and just wanted to help out. So he was willing to put $50,000 in a Nico coming in and doing advertising for him.
Wow.
And got told, nope, $65,000. And you get him for 4 hours, and only 1 hour that's recording videos. And he said, and he came back to me and said, no one can make money off of that. And I'm like, no one can make money off of this. It's so stupid. All of it's so priced, so dumb that it's not based in reality. It's like science fiction. What everybody's pricing the in-out, what the players want, science fiction. What the schools and the NIL collectives want to charge people who want to try to help their school out by using somebody for advertising. Everyone loses their backside, and I know 2 businesses that have shut down because they put their marketing budget into NIL.
Well, I will tell you this. It was mostly dumb luck, because I got Jacob Warnock, Cooper Mays, a key player, and 2 great, well-spoken players. And I made one good decision, because I called first about Nico, and they said, oh, that's probably going to be at least $2,000 per episode. And I was like, 20 minutes per week, $2,000? It's like hard pass. Yeah. So maybe one good decision by Dave, but for the most part, dumb luck.
But I will say, but what you did, you kept it small, right? You went and you did the thing that we've always done, and it has a proven track record in marketing, which is you went and got a couple of players that everybody knew, local. You got it underwritten by another company. You made a little money on it. Probably didn't make you're not buying a Bentley or anything with that money, but you made a little money on it, and it's part of your overall plan to monetize what you're doing. That's what it has to be. But when you ask somebody, I mean, there's no chance to recoup $2 million to Joe Milton. There's no scenario anyone can do that. Like, there's no company. And for all the criticisms that people have for Spire can't recoup that. That's not on them. You know what I mean? Like, the money's dumb. Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. There is no scenario they can recoup $2 million on a wide receiver at Ohio State. So this is a lot of why I think Tennessee's biggest boosters aren't throwing money into NIL, is because they realize it's a dumb business model and it's not going to work.
Interesting. Great stuff, Will. 3 to 7 on the Sports Animal with Tyler Ivins, and we greatly appreciate the time. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, thanks, man.
Have a good one, Will.
Always nice to join us. We appreciate that, and I guess good for Tennessee that you didn't have any monstrous breaking news, because last week we went from Nico's going to have a big orange-white game to Nico wants more money to Nico wasn't at practice to Nico might not be a ball anymore. Probably the craziest show we've had. And maybe the craziest show we'll ever have, and it all happened live. What are you doing? Are you throwing change in a jar? Or are you
No, I was picking up a couple quarters and I dropped them multiple times. I didn't mean to do that.
It is Good Friday, so Caleb is taking collections. Let's get to the stat of the day. Does Tennessee suddenly have an NIL problem? Let's close with this real quick. And I'll give you credit. I think the television contract is a part of it, but I also think the donor bases are probably more affluent at a school like Michigan and Ohio State than perhaps Tennessee. I also think Tennessee and the other schools that in the SEC that are supported by boosters have older boosters. And I don't think Jim Haslam, who's 92 years old, I don't think he wants to spend a dad blame dollar on any player. I think he'll stroke a big check and it's Neyland Stadium fueled by Pilot, but I don't think he wants to spend money on an 18-year-old athlete when he went through hellacious training camps under General Neyland and got his education and was damn proud of it. Caleb, I have trouble thinking, and you mentioned the age thing. I kind of thought it was the opposite of the way that discussion went. I think the older you are, the less you want to spend money on some 18-year-old kid.
Well, I actually think there's a different layer of this, and something Will brought up because there was an Auburn business that went public. We know this, the Haslam family sold Pilot to Warren Buffett's company. And so Pilot, if Tennessee, we know Tennessee has a Pilot partnership, but Dave, you know this, back in the day when Jim Haslam ran Pilot, a Pilot partnership, that was a charity effort by Jim Haslam, right? Because he wanted to see Tennessee do well. Warren Buffett's company doesn't care if if Warren Buffett's company is doing a Pilot partnership with Tennessee, they expect to recoup an investment, right?
Yes. Derek says Caleb's got a retro Coke machine in his office. I'll say this too. Not to interrupt you. I think Jim Haslam sees the value in being associated with Tennessee football. I don't think he sees value. I'm just using him as an example. I don't think he sees value about being associated with Boo Carter or any individual player.
Yes, but also I guess where I'm getting is these older boosters that did love the university that might actually have seen the value, they're selling their companies now because they're old. And as we learned with the Haslam family, sometimes their kids ain't smart enough to run the company they built. So it's one of those situations where I think I think you're going to see a lot more businesses get sold that don't. I mean, you've talked about this with Nike, Dave, and I give you credit. You were ahead of the curve on this. Everybody has tried to sell for a long time. Oh, Nike's going to make Oregon go win a national title. Oregon still hasn't won a national title. You know why? And you always point this out. Nike is a business first. They are not going to prop up Oregon insofar as it hurts their bottom line.
Right. So, I mean, what if Duke comes to them and says, we're trying to build this football program and we've given you all this exposure and sure you paid for it, but Adidas is willing to pay the same money to be associated with our basketball program and you're funneling, making up a number, $100 million in NIL to Oregon or $100 million in facilities to Oregon. They can't. It's a conflict of interest. And Phil Knight may absolutely love the Ducks, but he loves money more.
Yes. And this is the same as, I know Rutgers has this delusion that Elon Musk is going to, because he does vanity projects, is going to throw a lot of money at Rutgers to try to make it big. I'm going to tell you guys this. Elon Musk will only throw so much money. He loves money more than anything else. He's not going to throw money at a college football program if it cost him his net worth. Okay. That's
why when he bought X, Twitter, that's why everybody said, man, he's lost his mind there. No, I mean, it's now profitable. And he's just a guy that sees numbers unlike you and me.
Well,
whether it's on the spectrum or whether he's got now, I think he's inflating some of those X numbers. But he's making money is the point.
Well, here's why I don't want to get
sidetracked.
Yeah, sorry. He's not making money off X, but the things that he has been allowed to do and the deals he struck with governments based on him buying X, that's what's making him money. But
agreed. But let's give it for instance. If I write a takeout piece, which for those that don't know is like a longer piece on a player, which we plan to do this summer, it probably doesn't technically make me money. But if you read it and you're like, man, Dave really nailed that, or Caleb really nailed that, you're more likely, I think, to come back to offthehooksports.com. You're more likely to watch us when we're on our show. So if we spend 20 hours, and I've done this before, I've spent 40 hours on one story, and we probably don't have the flexibility to do that, nor do most people have the attention span anymore. But if we did, Caleb, and it helped our brand, it may not directly give us money in hand, but it helps the overall profitability of the company. So
yes, that's why the quality of what we write is as important as what we churn out. I mean, this is what I'll just say from the other side. You talk about Nike. This is the mistake Under Armour made with Maryland and the uniforms 15 years ago. They're like, oh, we're just going to generate buzz. All we have to do is generate buzz. You know, Under Armour never actually spent money on a design team. And that's why they've tanked, because guess what? Their designs suck. And so, like, they've tanked in popularity because of that. And so, yeah, it's the whole, I mean, this is all a business. You're right. People aren't making their money on the back end, and Tennessee hasn't. Every SEC school to this point is going to have an NIL problem because of the TV contracts. That's a $700 million difference. You're talking an NIL budget difference for every single school at a minimum.
Guys that make billions of dollars don't really care if their favorite team wins on Saturday, Sunday. Maybe the one exception's Mark Cuban, because he got lucky and made his money. He got out and got lucky and didn't lose his money, and he bought the team.
How do you think they made their billions? These are people that put children in Africa in slave camps to get rich.
and probably ignore their own children as well.
Yes, exactly.
Let's get to this day in Tennessee sports history. I teased the wrong one. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. It's right down below. Follow them now. And they are so excited for a major announcement they just made. James Little Man Stewart will be in the store in North Knoxville on April the 26th from 4 to 6. He'll have autographs. He'll have inscriptions. They're all there. Again, check it out below, and you just go to Sports Treasures TN. Follow them because they've done well in the NIL game as well, as they have players, maybe not a Nico, but they have players there that are willing to sign. And I will tell you this, they picked the right players, because in my experience there, the players have been very engaged with the fans. So Sports Treasures, North Knoxville, please tell them that you heard about it on Off the Hook Sports and offthehooksports.com. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Sports Treasures.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Sports Treasures is...
Today is the 13-year anniversary of Pat Summitt announcing that she is stepping down as head coach of Tennessee. Very sad day, obviously, in Tennessee Lady Vols history. Tennessee sports history, forget that.
Sports history.
Just sports history.
You can even drop the Tennessee. You know, there haven't been... Well, I'll go ahead and hazard it to say, unless Paul Bear Bryant, because he died a couple of months after he retired, unless he retired because of health reasons, I can't think of another coach that was still at an elite level that's career was cut short because of illness. Sure, I'm missing someone.
Funny enough, Tennessee has had three coaches, and Pat Summitt was just the most recent. Ray Mears had to retire early because of health reasons, and he had just had the Bernie and Ernie show. And I don't know if you know this, Dave, but Robert Neyland had to retire early because of health reasons too. And Neyland many people believe that Neyland could have coached for another 10 years. Well,
I wish he would have, and I'm glad he went to the war because we won it. But I wish he hadn't had to go to the war, because I think he is, and I'm not just saying this because of the Tennessee show, I think he is the most overlooked, historically great coach in the history of all of sport.
I agree.
If he doesn't go to the war, he probably wins another championship or two. If he coaches another, which I didn't know that part till just now, if he coaches another 10 years, he wins another championship or two. And we're talking about him being right up with one of the greats. I remember one time they had this traveling, it was an exhibit, and it was vote for the greatest coach of all time. And they had the top 10 coaches on there. And I remember they set it up right outside of Neyland Stadium before a game, and General Neyland wasn't on that. And I thought that was just a damn shame.
That's a total damn shame because General Neyland he's on the SEC Mount Rushmore. The 3 SEC Mount Rushmore coaches are Saban, Bear Bryant, and General Neyland. And then you can debate the 4th. I have Spurrier as the 4th, but like the 3 at the top are Neyland, Bryant, and Saban. Clear cut, clear as day.
It might have even been 12 or 16 coaches they had on that thing.
That's insane. And also, I mean, again,
I actually told the guy who was running it. I mean, the poor guy was probably like 24 years old, and he was doing it for an internship. He's like, ugh.
And think about by the way, when you talk about winning the war, I mean, we'll talk more about this on Memorial Day, but when Neyland had to build up the United States military again in 1940 when no one knew it was being built up. The reason the war was, when the U.S. got involved, they so dominated the Germans in that war, was because nobody, and I mean the whole globe, was unaware of just how much the United States had built up its military because it was all done in secret. Neyland was doing it all in secret, training troops all over to do it.
That's insane that he was one of the best coaches ever and an incredible a general at all. I mean, you don't just follow orders and get to general level. You got to be pretty special. Derek said Neyland would have at least dominated until the Wishbone era. You know history better than me. And then I want to talk some more about Pat Summitt.
Yeah, I do wonder if Neyland would have adjusted to the T formation of the Wishbone era, because remember, Neyland's last go-around in 50 and 51, he was still doing the single wing, which Tennessee had been running all the way back in the 20s, and people were saying it was people were talking about how the single wing was outdated. Neyland won 2 more national titles running it in the early 50s, but remember this, he didn't really win it because he was running the single wing. He won it because he was getting gigantic defenders like Doug Atkins, freak athletes like Doug Atkins to go play. So you do wonder, going long term, what would have happened if into the 60s. I do think, because Bowden Wyatt had one good year with the single wing in 56, but the single wing really sputtered towards the late 50s, early 60s, and that's why Bowden Wyatt ended up stepping down, and then they brought in Doug Dickey to bring in the T formation at the time. The slot T is what they call it, which countered, and then the slot T was fashionable, but you're right, that fell out of style really fast when the Wishbone came into fashion in the 70s. It was the Wishbone and the Veer that came into fashion at the same time in the 70s.
Good Lord, if I didn't like Caleb, I would suggest you write a book about all this, but writing a book sucks. Derek says, Caleb's giving me the chills right now. Neyland was a man. Yeah. Where would he rank? I want to get back to Pat, but where would he rank among sports figures that you would most want to interview? Because he's got 2 complete different sides of him. And that is the war side. I'd love to learn more about that. I bet that guy has 5 million good stories in his story sack.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Neyland,
that's something that's taken off lately. Have you not heard of story sack?
I have not. Neyland would be near the top though. But also, I mean, I'm still, a part of this is how good of an interview you are. So I would have always loved to just sit down with Johnny Majors because he understood history better than anybody. He had a deep appreciation for college football history.
I had the opportunity to do that on a couple of different occasions. Do you want to hear the best one? Do I have time for an Uncle Dave story?
Yeah, let's do an Uncle Dave story.
Okay, I'll go fast. So this is 2 days after Lane Kiffin has left. All right. And you know, Johnny Majors was all about Lane Kiffin because his name wasn't Philip Fulmer, right?
Oh, yeah.
It didn't matter if they hired Adolf Hitler. I mean, it wasn't Philip Fulmer. Okay. I mean, seriously.
Speaking of General Neyland and fighting the Germans.
You remember that's when Majors was kind of brought back into the fold. People liked him again because he wasn't on golf trips saying that Philip Fulmer was fat, which he used to do every single summer. Every summer, some guy from Sweetwater would interview him, and then the story would get picked up by the AP, and it was like he was just dumping all over Fulmer and subsequently the university. Well, I bumped into him on the way out of the facility one time, and I saw him, and I thought, well, this would be great for some perspective. And I expected him to say, oh, that Lane Kiffin, how dare he leave the University of Tennessee? He should be more loyal. Wouldn't you have thought that's what he would say? Being a Tennessee guy? Nope. Well, let me tell you something. David, he was one of the ones I allowed to call me David. David, let me just tell you this. There have been plenty of guys that have left after 2 years, and I don't remember all of them, and I'm not going to pretend to. But he went back into the 80s. Then he went back into the 70s. Then he went back into the 60s and gave me 3 or 4 players from every decade that had left after 1 or 2 years. So I'm driving home. My phone rings. I don't recognize the number. And I'm like, I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to go home. So there's the voicemail. People used to leave voicemail, kids. I listened to the voicemail. He goes, Dave, got to tell you, Coach Majors, back in the 1940s, there was this guy and this guy. He coached 2 years at a school. He's got coached 1 year and he was gone. Then you go back to the 1930s, and you probably don't know this, but this guy at this school left after 1 year. And then you go back to the 1920s. Caleb, hand to the air. I'll get a Bible and put my hand on it. He went back to the 1910s. His memory was that insanely sharp. The voicemail was 5 minutes long.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
It was like, and I was like, I love this dude.
Oh, I love Johnny Majors.
Dan, I take a shot headed out the door. Majors did not lie. Fulmer was fat. Well, I'm a little fat too. All right. So coming up on the program, we've gone just out of control here for the past few moments, which has been fun. The UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. Is Nico the most disappointing UT prospect ever? He ranks right up there. And also, I'm sick of all this middlem talk of getting a quarterback who absolutely needs a place to land and all this stuff. And it's the spring portal and you can't get a big name. To heck with that. Because I don't trust Merklinger or McIntyre. Go out and get a big name. Do it now. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. No tariffs on the cars they have on the lot now. East Tennessee's largest volume dealer, and they absolutely have the customer service aspect completely perfected. You don't have to spend a lot of time to find the car of your dreams, and you drive off the lot in the car of your dreams. I still have the car of my dreams. I'm about 6 weeks in. Still absolutely love my Jeep that I got from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. They're on Parkside Drive. They're on Kingston Pike. Check out that inventory. Please tell them that Off the Hook Sports and Dave Hooker sent you. TedRussellFord.net, TedRussellLincoln.net. Stay tuned. Nico, the worst prospect ever? Certainly an argument to be made. 2 minutes Off the Hook Sports. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East.
The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Coming out of the break, and it's a short break. And it's always a short break because that's what we like to do. So all that we ask is that you support our sponsors because there are no 4, 5, 6 minute breaks here, which is the standard in broadcast. Sheila had a question. And please, the other thing I would ask you to do is hit that thumbs up button if you don't care. And then we're going to get interactive a little bit. Sheila said, question, since the holdout for Nico was because of the offense, were they asking for the coach, for Coach Joey to be fired before Nico plays again? I don't think they were asking that, but I don't think they would have had a problem with it, even though he was the main point of contact, which it makes no sense to me why Heupel was not the main point of contact in the final days leading to the divorce. But let's put it this way. Who's the coach that's known for running pro-style concepts in college? Like
Steve Sarkisian.
Steve Sarkisian. Okay.
Hence the reason Arch Manning chose Steve Sarkisian.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, his son, Bob Sarkisian, is the next great offensive coordinator. I don't think the Iamaleava family would have any problem whatsoever if Bob Sarkisian was the new offensive coordinator and Joey Halzle was back in the private sector.
I mean,
that sounds hardcore, man. And it makes no sense because he was the main point of contact. So
but it's so, yeah.
It's like I believe that in my gut, but my head's telling me surely not because I'm sure they were friends.
All right, let's look at because I'll say this. Maybe this is why Madden chose Arkansas, because Lamar Jackson did play for Bobby Petrino, and Lamar Jackson's balling in the NFL. But Dave, let's just go. I just have to point this out. We've massively overrated the system in college. I think people are like quarterbacks in gadget college systems don't pan out in the NFL. How about just most quarterbacks don't pan out in the NFL?
True. And it's even less important now because we've seen what Philadelphia has done with Jalen Hurts. They've been willing to adjust to his skills. Now, it used to be if you couldn't play pro style, if you couldn't read defenses, you weren't going to make it. And I would have understood Nico's argument that much more. But if he gets to the NFL, first of all, it's a crapshoot whether or not you make it. It depends who you end up with. And it's not a guarantee you'll make it just because you played for a pro style offense. You could have a guy that wants you to run around the yard or vice versa. But if Nico's good enough, he would have made it. Hendon Hooker's good enough to stick. And that's saying something, quite honestly, because he was not highly regarded throughout his college career until 2022, but he's been good enough to stick. So if Nico is supposed to be that much better, then he would have been good enough to start or play had he stayed at Tennessee in their offense. Agree or disagree?
No, 1,000% agree. I mean, I think that, and by the way, you brought up Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts played for Lincoln Riley. Kyler Murray played for Lincoln Riley. Baker Mayfield played for Lincoln Riley. All are starting in the NFL. Spoiler alert, Lincoln Riley also runs the Art Briles veer and shoot that Josh Heupel runs. The exact same system. Okay. And more important, we got to go back to this because I always bring it up. It's because they were contemporaries playing at the same time. That's why we always bring up Manning versus Warfel. Warfel put up the video game numbers. Manning went to the NFL. Dave, that had nothing to do with the college systems they played in. Peyton Manning was just a better quarterback than Danny Warfel, wasn't he?
Great. Yeah,
like,
agree. I mean, those that argued that Danny Warfel is a better quarterback just don't know anything about football.
Yeah, Danny Warfel. I mean, we look back, and you brought it up, and I've learned a little more. He's not even the best quarterback to run Spurrier's system. Rex Grossman is.
No, and I would say this too. I might debate that, but I would say this too. I don't think Steve Spurrier's offense got you ready for the NFL.
But also, Steve Spurrier just didn't have quarterbacks good enough for the NFL.
True.
And I mean, this is where I want to talk about this on Monday, but like the reason Spurrier would never kowtow to a Nico, you know this, as good as his offensive system was, Spurrier did not care who his quarterback was. He really didn't. I mean, he put no value on his quarterback.
No, I got the feeling that when he pulled a quarterback, he would whisper into his ear, he would say, "You're dead to me." Jack said, after hearing Will, can we afford to be competitive in several sports? I think what Will alluded to is no school can be competitive in several sports. I think you obviously have football and basketball. After that, I don't know where college athletics are going to be in 20 years.
I'll say this in 20
still be something you want to spend a lot. But in all fairness, I heard an interview with Gino Auriemma after he won the national championship. In all fairness, those guys, Caleb continues to rummage for change. In all fairness, I don't think the women in basketball are making a lot of money. I don't think the diamond balls and baseball players in college are making a lot of money. So I think you can, it's kind of like when you buy your kid a car. You're not buying them as nice of a car as what you're driving, but you can afford it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because you don't want to drive their ass around all the time. All right, stat of the day is now, and it leads us into the topic, pardon me, that I'm looking forward to getting into is Nico, the most disappointing Tennessee recruit of all time. That'll be hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. But first, it is the stat of the day.
A guy with a lot of job.
That is not the right element.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Brought to you in part by our friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry. A Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. rickterryjewelry.com. Caleb, stat of the day is?
In the Rivals era, which is 2002, in recruiting, Tennessee has signed 3 5-star quarterbacks out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Not one of them finished their careers at Tennessee.
Okay. Now, Peyton was before big-time recruiting coverage, so
yes.
he would have been. But
and Clausen would have been too.
He was recruiting coverage was around with Clausen.
Not for Rivals. I said the Rivals era.
I don't know that he would have been a 5-star.
I think he was.
I don't know he was elite. I mean, a 5-star to me is you could call up anybody and say, I want a scholarship, and they say yes. I don't know that he was that.
Maybe 4-star then. Either way, yes. So
who are the 3?
Nico, Harrison Bailey, and James Binks. 3 5-star quarterbacks. Not one of them finished their career at Tennessee.
Okay, so with Bailey, things went south because the whole program was going south. Banks, things went south because he thought he was God's gift to football. And Nico has a crazy dad. So 3 individual reasons. I don't know that there's a trend there, but that's a pretty crazy, interesting stat. Is the Faison Brandon kid, is he a 5-star or high 4?
He's a 5, but he hasn't signed yet, so he wouldn't count as somebody Tennessee signed.
Sure. McIntyre was a 4. Merklinger was a 4. I don't know. Maybe we need. Maybe everybody needs for Faison to lose a star. Maybe that's the key.
Probably
take a star from him. Okay. Is Nico Iamaleava the most disappointing Tennessee recruit in its history? Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. CityHeatandAir.com. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. I'm going to say yes. And we've got other names that we're going to throw out there. And feel free to give us some suggestions in the message board. Hot will be, no, he was more disappointing than Nico. Cold will be no. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you all of mine are going to be cold.
Let's make it, let's do it different. Hot or cold, they're in the same tier. They're in Nico's stratosphere of level of disappointment, even if they don't. They're not more, even if they don't beat Nico in disappointment. Is that fair?
Mine are still going to be all cold because of the publicity, the NIL implications, the fact that there was no good reason for him to be gone, that this seems like a PR snafu. So that to me is going to be far and away the winner. But nevertheless, let's dive into it.
And I'm going to say I do agree that he is with you, that he's the most disappointing in Tennessee history because of the money, the rating, and the fact that Tennessee declared open war on the NCAA on his behalf.
Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, CityHeatandAir.com. All right, here we go, Caleb. You have James Banks on the list. Again, I'm cold, but that was a very disappointing loss for Tennessee. Ended up at Carson Newman, had issues there as well. It was very surprising because came from a great family. You talk about how some people can just be wired wrong. That was probably James Banks. He had all the talent in the world. I think he could have been a Hall of Fame receiver. I think he was that good. It's rare that every single athlete on Tennessee's football team says, that's the best raw athlete, but they all told me that. So he just, something wasn't wired right, man. I mean, he just didn't get it. And I remember Philip Fulmer at practice one day saying, you've got to run the field because of not practicing hard. And he just refused and did deep knee bends, like air squats. And that's what he did on the sideline. And it was basically a big middle finger to Philip Fulmer. I was stunned that he didn't kick him off the practice field right then. But he is one there, hot or cold. He's in the stratosphere. I'll play by your rules.
Yes, he's in the stratosphere. And here's the biggest reason he's in the stratosphere. The stories you've told me, James Banks flaming out didn't just make him a disappointment. The concessions Fulmer made for him with his attitude and behavior played a huge role in destroying the program long term. I've listened to not just you, but some other people told me basically the level of respect that players had for Philip Fulmer after that situation went way downhill. No one considered him a significant authority figure anymore, to the point that, like, look, it was that's when you started to get all the discipline issues after that. No one really considered Philip Fulmer a significant authority figure. And that's why Philip Fulmer tried to erase James Banks' entire history from Tennessee, because he realized he screwed up so bad with James Banks.
Wait, how did he try to erase his entire history?
Basically, a couple of people I know that were on the team in 2006 were telling me that when there was some highlight, you remember in the room, in the practice room, they would show all these Tennessee highlight clips just on video and things like that.
Yeah, but
Fulmer basically apparently went out of his way to tell people, like, anything involving James Banks, keep that off the highlight clip.
Well, that's not Philip protecting his reputation as a recruiter. That's Philip just being mad.
But he was that mad at James Banks. And James Banks, I don't think just ruined, it didn't just hurt James Banks or Tennessee. It torched the program under Philip Fulmer. The slide of the program, I think if you did like a top 5 reasons the program fell apart under Fulmer, you could maybe put James Banks himself in that reason, in those top 5.
I'm not going to go that far. I'll give you that he was the face of declining discipline in the program. And he was the face of, if you're a good enough athlete, you don't have to worry about discipline. So I'll give you that.
That's hot.
All right. Who's next?
The most standout one, and people are mentioning him on the message board, Bryce Brown. Bryce Brown.
Yeah. And then I would argue that from a talent perspective, well, not a talent perspective, but I would argue that, given that he had some success in the NFL, you would say maybe he was an even bigger bust than James Banks. But, man, I have trouble. It's disappointing, but I have trouble putting that on him because the entire program was in such disarray.
Yeah, I'm cold. As Bryce Brown was Lane Kiffin's selling point, and that was his, like, baby, getting Bryce Brown. But I can't sit there and say if Bryce Brown had stayed at Tennessee after Lane Kiffin left, that all of a sudden Derek Dooley has a successful tenure at Tennessee. Because I don't say that Derek Dooley's tenure fell apart because Bryce Brown left, honestly.
Lord, I remember Bryce Brown showed up one time at practice after he had said he's not going to be a part of the team. And this was spring practice. And if you're Derek Dooley, you don't bend over backwards to get a guy, right? But you at least say, oh, I saw him over there. We'd love for him to be a part of the team. He was asked about it. He said he didn't even see him.
Wow.
I mean, how did you not see him on the sideline? It was in the indoor facility, too. So it's not like they were spread over 3 fields. I mean, I thought Bryce Brown actually was extending an olive branch to, like, hey, you're not Lane. You didn't sign me. But I don't want to sit out a year. Let's give this a shot. And Derek said that he just didn't even know he was there.
That's insane.
All right. So the next one you have is
Derek Rogers.
I don't have him anywhere close to Banks, Brown, or especially not Nico.
Yeah, I'm cold on this. Derek Rogers. I mean, the year he was dismissed from the team, Tennessee had a historically great offense that year. The only reason they fell apart was because Sal Sinceri was running the defense.
We got some other ones. Hot or cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Thanks for filling out on the message board. Let's attack those. Hot or cold brought to you by City Heating and Air, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters over 50 years in East Tennessee. Let me tell you something. People come out from HVAC companies and they want to sell you a new unit because they make more money. That's not City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. You might just need a part that's a couple of $100 instead of a few $1,000. More all-time bust brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Okay, let's go to the message board. Khalil McKenzie was one. I don't have him in that category. And the reason is I thought he should have been an offensive guard from day one. And I knew that Butch Jones didn't have the guts to move him. I thought he was out of position. So I thought that was going to be a disaster even during his recruitment.
And it wasn't like he didn't play for Tennessee. So I can't call him like a total bust because he was a defensive lineman who did play defensive lineman and had a couple of productive moments. So like, it's not like it wasn't like a public flame out. So I'm with you. He's not on that list.
All right. David mentions Jonathan Crompton, who Scout had as a 5-star. Rivals had him as the number 2 quarterback.
Yeah, but he was a 4-star on Rivals.
Right. But anyway, Rivals had him as the number 2 quarterback in the country. Caleb, again, I think the coaching change, and it's not just the head coaching change, it was the offensive coordinator change as well. I thought undermined any opportunity he had for success at Tennessee. So maybe it was a disappointment, but I have trouble laying that on his shoulders.
Yeah, I don't put that on his shoulders. One I forgot to mention before we get to a couple others, though. Another big one.
Forgot to mention too that I don't want to forget is Brian Darden.
Oh, Brian Darden, yes, 95.
I know a lot of people who watched him in practice early in his career as a freshman and thought he'd be a superstar. People that I think know football. It was before my time. And then what happened is a lot of those guys that won a national championship in 98 didn't like the fact he was getting that much pub, and they beat the bejesus out of him.
Well, I heard Brian Darden carried himself like he deserved that much pub too. So a few of them decided to lay some wood on him in practice.
We were told that by, I think, Fred White. And then
I wanted to name the one mine that I forgot to because no one hasn't mentioned it yet. But Jalen Hurd. Again, you think it's more he should have been playing defensive end, but the way he publicly transferred in the middle of a season and Tennessee's season fell apart in that moment, like you got given the fact that he was like Butch Jones's biggest selling point early on, you can make a case for Jalen Hurd.
He was, but he had success on the field. But he
transferred out mid-season.
Yeah, that's not in that stratosphere to me. Travis Cozart would be another one. That's before your time. A local running back who he had issues that I was aware of because I'm from North Knoxville in the Clinton area that I didn't think that he would necessarily be able to overcome. So that was a big concern. Now, Derek also mentions Jarrett Garantano. That certainly has to be in the conversation.
Yeah, Garantano. But Garantano, again, you talk about like situations you're in. Garantano, look at who he played for. He had to play for Butch Jones. Then he had to play for Jeremy Pruitt. And he had to play for 4 different offensive coordinators. He had four different offensive coordinators in 5 years at Tennessee. So like.
Okay, well, we look back at this one day. If you had a bet, hot or cold, we'll look back on this 5 years from now and say Nico Iamaleava wasn't a bust at Tennessee. He was just under the wrong offensive coordinator.
No, because Nico Iamaleava committed to this offense at the time. Jared Garantano committed to an offense, and then that offense left him his first year there, and then Butch Jones threw him to the wolves. I'll tell you what. A lot of these we're naming, if you notice, it's kind of the situations around him. Nico's a self-inflicted disappointment. James Banks, I would both agree, was a self-inflicted disappointment, right? That's on him, nobody else.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Self-inflicted disappointment. Brent Schaefer. Brent Schaefer.
Yeah, but Brent was not even in the realm of ability that the others guys had. He was 6'1".
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. But the way
every other player we mentioned had all the tangible.
That's true. That's a good point. So putting all this out there, James Banks seems like the most self-inflicted bust of all of them by far.
I'm gonna ask you this in 2 minutes. Which one of those guys would have been the best pro? Had they had all the intangibles, had they taken care of business, who would have been the best pro? Also, wow, I'm just telling you, call me crazy, and people have already done it on the message board on our stories. If I'm Nico, I'm skipping UCLA. I'm going straight to the NFL, and I'll tell you why. Also, what Tennessee prospect had all the tangibles and just didn't make it? Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave Hooker said, "Hey, Bo." The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. 2 minutes Off the Hook Sports.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute
Frank, like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Believe it or not, we've got some good news for you coming up. A rule change is going to greatly help Josh Heupel, Tennessee, and specifically his offense. What was the question I teased into the break, Caleb? I can't even remember.
Of the Tennessee bust, who would have been the best in the NFL? The most disappointing Tennessee recruits, who would have been the best in the NFL if they had all the intangibles? It would be hard, even though he was the best athlete. It'd be hard for me to say James Banks, because I think James Banks was more made out to be a receiver than a quarterback in the NFL, and he wanted to play quarterback. He had a cannon for an arm, but he wasn't accurate. So because of that, if he plays receiver, I'm going to go James Banks. James Banks as a receiver.
Okay, well, I'm not going to put a bunch of parameters on it, because then I would take Khalil McKenzie, and I think he'd still be playing offensive guard in the NFL.
Okay, well, I mean, that's...
You just got to give it... What are you doing?
Sorry, that was an accident. My hand slipped, I promise.
What are you doing with Corey? You're like Spoon Man. Remember that song from Soundgarden?
No. Anyways, yeah, James, you're going to go Khalil McKenzie. I'll go James Banks. Okay.
Ooh, new one. Dustin Moore. That is a great one. Now, that's before your time. I have never seen a more physically gifted tight end in person in my life. I haven't. And I'm including, what was his name? Tony, the guy that played for Miami.
Kellen Winslow?
Yeah, I'm including Kellen Winslow in that. All right, so I got, I did see Jeremy Shockey. All right, who would have been the best pro had they been sane? I got Jeremy Banks, Khalil McKenzie, Dustin Moore, and who do
Jeremy
you want?
Banks or James Banks?
Oh, James. Sorry. Oh, an argument could be made for Jeremy. All right, so who you got as number 4? I'll let you fill out.
Bryce Brown.
Okay, Bryce Brown. Well, Bryce Brown was a pretty good pro.
He played like 2 snaps in the pros.
Maybe
Maybe.
somebody else. He didn't fit the parameters of what we're doing here. Give me somebody else.
Okay, Khalil McKenzie, James Banks, Dustin Moore. I will go Khalil McKenzie, James Banks, Dustin Moore, Jalen Hurd.
Jalen Hurd. All right. There we go. Jalen Hurd probably still would be playing defensive end in the league had that been the case. All right. Be sure and hit that like button. We greatly appreciate that because if you haven't done it, then you just don't love us. So the thumbs up button, if you haven't subscribed to this point, we need you to be sure and do that. So let's dive into something everybody's going to call me crazy. But I've had enough of talking about guys that are at smaller schools, guys that would be a stopgap player, guys that couldn't even possibly in a million years beat out Jake Merklinger because I think he's pretty good, but lacks experience, or George McIntyre, who's too light. Tennessee seems settled on getting a warm body, a third quarterback. I've had it. I don't believe that's the case. I think you go after a guy that you believe can realistically win the job. I know a little bit about the football calendar that some of you might not know. Yes, spring practice is important. It helped McIntyre, I'm sure. It helped Merklinger. It helped Nico for the last 2 days. And I do think there's something to be said for getting on campus in January if you're going to be the starting quarterback. Completely agree with that. But Caleb, I also think that summer workouts are every bit as important to quarterbacks and skill position players as spring practice, especially the way that Josh Heupel runs kind of a soft practice. They don't tackle. There's not much physicality. Caleb, it's time for Tennessee to go out and get a big name. Has anybody called Carson Beck to see if he's still dating his girlfriend that he moved to Miami for?
Oh, he's not. They broke up.
Okay. That's good. This is turning into a WAG site. What's it called? Wives and girlfriends site. All right. So they broke up. He may want to move back into the SEC. Has anybody called him? How about some of the other fantastic quarterbacks? And I pointed this out in a column on offthehooksports.com. Caleb, I'm just not to the point that I believe Tennessee can't go out. Now they have $2.5 million to spend in NIL. I'm not to the point that I think Tennessee just has to find a stopgap guy. Why not find a guy that can be an elite quarterback that you believe you can build a program around? Because we just went through all the bust. You like McIntyre a lot. I'm kind of lukewarm on both of them. But Caleb, I think that Tennessee's fans and Tennessee might even be setting their sights a little too low. If you can match the money, why can't you go out and try to get a guy during the spring transfer portal that you believe can come in and win the job in the summer and in preseason camp? It's a tough ask. I get it. But these guys believe in their ability, and you need to believe in them. And right now, Tennessee is taking a major step back in quarterback if it's Merklinger or McIntyre for 2 different reasons. Why not go ahead and swing for the fences? Maybe, worst case scenario, you get one of your rivals to spend more money in NIL so that they can't secure other prospects. So that's my take. Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank. We'll get Caleb's thoughts. Member FDIC, life made better. Bank on it. The Vols' sights are too low when it comes to what they're viewing as a third quarterback, but could be a starting quarterback this season, 2025.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank.
All right, before we look at some of those quarterbacks that I think Tennessee should go ahead and call and at least raise the price on them, Caleb, what do you think of my assertion? Do you think it's even possible that Tennessee could get an elite 5-star? I mean, there are no 5 stars in the transfer portal. I've already looked, but do you think they could get elite push for a starting job type of quarterback? And one of those might very well be at UCLA.
I think Tennessee absolutely could go for an elite quarterback. And I'm not saying you're wrong on this, and they should shoot high and they should just try to pay somebody to come to them. And for what it's worth in the moment, Notre Dame quarterback Steve Angeli has hit the transfer portal. He's the most highly touted quarterback in the portal. As of now, he's the number 18 ranked quarterback. But I'll just tell you.
No. I think you misspoke. He's the most high rated undecided
quarterback. That is true. Yes. Dave, I'll just tell you, though, some of the names I dropped yesterday when I talked about and the names that Vols fans have been dropping on Twitter and wherever on people they want to target. Trust me, they're not shooting low. Now, they didn't shoot Carson Beck high. Maybe they don't want Carson Beck. Maybe they find him overrated.
Okay, well, let's move on then. What about John Mateer, who went from Washington State to Oklahoma? Are you telling me that you couldn't talk him out of Oklahoma with Brett Venables as the head coach?
I mean, you could, but
okay,
I mean that's a good one. John Mateer, I didn't even think about him yesterday, but you're right. I mean, he ran for 800 yards and
I don't want to knock your list either, because I think your list was spot on as far as what they're doing, and that comes from okay. What about Fernando Mendoza, who went from Cal to Indiana? Are you telling me you can't? These are the 4-star quarterbacks, by the way. I know it stings, but Nico is the highest rated quarterback in the transfer portal. But you're a little behind, but Mendoza is going to Indiana. Now, none of these NIL contracts are binding, so why not call Mendoza and say, hey, dude, come on down. You could play here immediately. Why not make that sales pitch? To heck with being loyal to Merklinger or McIntyre. Either you believe in Merklinger, most likely, or you need to go find another quarterback.
Mendoza, I would say I wouldn't go for him because I don't think he'd be good enough for Heupel's system. We're talking about a guy that threw for 3,000 yards, had 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and is a statue in the pocket.
Okay, I'm fine with that. If you don't think they're a good fit or you don't think they're good enough, don't do it. But these are the 4-star quarterbacks, and they're all going to schools that have less to offer than Tennessee. Fernando Mendoza.
We just did Fernando Mendoza.
Luke Kromenhoek. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I didn't know how to say Iamaleava, so I was able to get around that. He goes from Florida State to Mississippi State. Mississippi State is basically Tennessee junior. I mean, they're running a similar type of offense. They don't have as much talent. They don't have the same facilities. They don't have Knoxville, which is a great town. Why are you not calling Luke Kromenhoek?
I would call him. I would give him a call. I don't know how. I do think mobility is kind of important for this, and there is the only thing that would make me a little bit concerned is I don't know how mobile he is, but also more importantly, he transferred to Mississippi. If he transferred from Florida State to Mississippi State, are we sure he's good enough?
Okay, there's some more, but I got 2 that stand out to me. You think Connor Wegman is better than Jake Merklinger?
No, I'm just going to say it. Not for Heupel's system. No.
Okay, I do. He's going to Houston. I think you could call him and get him to leave Houston and come to Tennessee. We'll agree to disagree. Miller Moss.
Okay, Miller Moss is actually
Southern Cal to Louisville is what he's doing.
And at USC last year, he was a bit of a disappointment, and he ran this, but he is familiar with the system, and he ran Lincoln Riley's system. The only
Nico was a bit of a disappointment.
Well, that's true. But Miller Moss is not mobile. That is another one of the issues. By the way, this is how I know. This is how generations change. Dave still says Southern Cal, and everybody else says USC. I love that about you, Dave.
No, I say Southern Cal because they considered it an insult, and they didn't accept my son. That's why I say Southern Cal. They don't like that. They like Southern California or they like USC. So that's why I say Southern Cal. Just a little jab.
Oh, okay, just a little jab. I thought you were one of those. I thought you were one of those people in the
my son.
I thought you were one of those just Southerners who just thinks USC, South Carolina, obviously. And because
I just think that they didn't accept my son, and I'd rather go see him in LA than Amherst, Massachusetts.
Fair enough.
You have to fly to either one. So where would you rather go, LA or Mass?
Yeah, not even Boston in Massachusetts. Amherst. It's like
it's like an hour and a half from anything. So no, that's why I call him Southern Cal. I think that Tennessee, based off the reports that we have heard and based off the digging and the names we gave you yesterday, and if you want to go back and listen to that, you should, because those are realistic names. But I don't know why somebody who is committed, signed, whatever you are nowadays, I don't know why you're not going after them, because there are no binding contracts. There's no reason you can't. Tennessee needs to set their sights high, and they need to say, just like the NFL does, the quarterback position is vacant for you. It may not be. You may be lying. You may think Merkling or McIntyre's the guy, but I don't believe that yet, and I don't think Tennessee fans believe that.
All right, I agree, but I just make the argument that some of the guys I named on Thursday are actually better than the ones you're talking about. I think Avery Johnson or Byron Brown is a better option. And Avery Johnson is at Kansas State. Tennessee would lure him away. They could throw money at him, and he started last year. So that's, I guess.
But Bobby, no offense to you, but Bobby Petrino, who's got a better history of coaching quarterbacks and putting together offenses, seems to think that Miller Moss is a better fit.
Bobby Petrino thinks Miller
or a better quarterback.
Oh, okay. But I mean, the fits for Bobby Petrino and fits for Josh Heupel are a little bit different, though. Look, I mean, again, I was naming, Joey Aguilar.
Let me stop for just a second. Why do you think? I think Joey Aguilar's the best option if you get him to come back east, but because Nico's going to bump him. But why do you place so much of an emphasis on running?
Because I do, because Josh Heupel's system has you look at one side of the field, so you kind of got to be able to elude your blindside tackle a little bit more than most quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think if you had Peyton Manning, he's not a great runner, but you'd take him. And
I would take Heath Schuler in this offense over Peyton Manning. Wouldn't even think about it.
Debatable. But if you're not able to adjust things in order to take a Peyton Manning, then something's wrong intrinsically with your offense. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Again, I've got to remind you, you have to check out our friends at TedRussellFord.net, TedRussellLincoln.net. No tariffs, zero tariffs. They're not out there. And I'm here to tell you right now, the customer service is perfected. Coming up, we're going to dive into, should Nico just skip UCLA and prepare for the NFL? Would he do that? I think there's a chance he would.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location.
All right. Do you believe that Nico Iamaleava will finish the season as a Bruin? Because I see pitfalls. Number one, I think that there's a heck of a chance that negotiations could fall through and he doesn't end up at UCLA in the first place. So maybe by the time you're watching this, it's dated and we apologize. Number two, I think his dad's a little insano. And as I was told by somebody that speaks to the family on a regular basis, just not very bright. I believe there is a better than average chance. And remember, this is the show that we broke that he wasn't at practice, that there was a good chance he wasn't going to be a ball. This is just 1 week ago. I don't feel very strong at all that Nico finishes the season as a Bruin. And I could easily see him. Now, he's back in LA theoretically. He's got all those quarterback coaches that just grow on trees out there. I could easily see him not finishing the season, saying, was it Maurice Clarett that did this, I believe? Maurice Clarett ended his season early and decided just to get ready for the NFL. Maybe it was somebody else. I'm mistaken. I would not be stunned at all. And I don't think it's the worst move in the world for Nico just to say, to heck with college. I am moving on to the NFL, and I'm going to use whatever time I have to get ready until I'm able to enter, which would be 3 years after his high school graduating class, which would be the 2026 draft. Chances it happens, and what do you think of the notion?
I think it's actually a super smart thing to do. And the biggest reason I think it's a smart thing to do is if Nico – look, I don't believe in this offense that they're running. I don't believe in the coaching at UCLA. I don't believe in the help Nico has. So I think he's going to struggle significantly this year. There's already an intangible question about Nico. The last thing you want is to devalue your stock from a tangible perspective. I think he can only hurt his draft stock playing for UCLA this year. And
I agree.
Yeah, and so I see you.
And at least you can leave Tennessee saying that Joey guy didn't know what the world he was doing. I signed up to play for Alex Golish and Josh Heupel, not Joey and Josh.
Yeah, exactly.
You got someplace you could blame it on. And NFL coaches, when they watch Tennessee's offense last year, they're going to realize that it wasn't any sort of pro style, that it was incredibly limited by personnel. I think you've got an argument with NFL scouts that you won't have in 6 months or 8 months.
And also, so Maurice Clarett's the one who did it. He won. For those who don't remember, Maurice Clarett won his case initially. And because he won his case, Mike Williams of USC left for the NFL draft. Remember Mike Williams, Dave? And after Mike Williams left, then a judge overturned Maurice Clarett's case, and the NCAA, in their ever-loving stupidity, didn't let Mike Williams come back to college, which was like absolutely pathetic. But
they did the same thing to Dante Stallworth for a
They did, but Stallworth didn't make a decision under the impression that, you know what I mean? He made a decision and changed his mind. Mike Williams made a decision based on what legally was allowed at the time. Mike Williams missed a year. And what did he do? He ended up getting drafted anyway. And he played 6-7 years in the NFL and had a pretty good career in the NFL as a receiver. So, I mean, I totally agree. And you're seeing this with some college basketball players now, where they just shut things down and decide to go pro. And I mean, you're going to see that with the pros. So, I mean, with college football, I would do it if I were Nico. And that would also, I mean, look, people are going to question about the intangibles. Something Dave has brought up that Dave is absolutely right on. And anybody who knows NFL coaches knows this. They are the most arrogant narcissists in the world. Somebody thinks that they're going to be able to work with Nico to a certain degree.
I guarantee you, Sean McVay would look at Nico lighting it up in an individual pro day at his high school. And he'd probably have Mike Matthews fly out there and run routes for him. But I will absolutely tell you that Sean McVay or any offensive coach would look at him and that ability and say, I can make him special. Oh. And I believe that. I will believe that till the day I die. I don't think he helps himself. Now, somebody pointed out on the message board that he's not going to get drafted in the 3rd round. I want to be real clear. This is just the first step of a reclamation project. The next step might be getting drafted in the 6th, 7th round, or not getting drafted, which isn't the worst thing in the world because he could pick his spot. So I'm not saying by sitting out, he's suddenly a highly valued pick. I'm just saying he's going to have NIL issues at UCLA. You can see him coming because he's going to make a lot less money. Who that you know was unhappy with their job and went to the same job somewhere else and made less money and was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever done that. I mean, even if you did do that, say you got laid off at a job and had to go to a job for lesser money, it's like I know people who've had to deal with that. They very obviously don't want to be at their other job. You know what I mean? And so I totally get what you're saying. And Nico Iamaleava is not going to be happy at UCLA. Look, I mean, the only thing he could possibly do is hurt his draft stock so much that only the Titans will be dumb enough to take them because the Titans have a stupid owner in Amy Adams Strunk. I'm sorry, I just got to get that shot in real quick. But
and David makes his point. Says he won't make as much as he would in college. Well, let me go ahead and tell you something. If you're working a job just for the paycheck and there's nothing rewarding about it other than the check, which the government takes 40% of, then you're not going to do very well. And I agree with Caleb. If it's, listen, he's not going to do well at UCLA. And if it's all about the money, then that's just another problem stacked on his huge mountain of problems.
I totally agree. So putting that, and also we don't even know if that's true. If he plays this year, he could devalue his draft stock so much that he might actually make less money than he otherwise would have sitting out the year and then maybe getting lucky to be a first-round draft pick. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Because let's put this out there, Dave. NFL coaches are still in love with the combine and the physical tools. Whatever you think about Nico Iamaleava, he's going to blow coaches away with his workouts next year, isn't he? When he shows what he can do throwing the ball.
Here's another factor. It's a lot easier to put on weight when you're not playing football.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. I mean, listen, every player I've talked to maybe one or two players in my life that said they actually gain weight during football. Almost everybody loses 10, 15, 20 pounds.
Because you're running, and particularly with tempo-based offenses now, you're running so much. I remember learning from Tim Grover was talking about this when they beefed up Michael Jordan for the Bad Boy Pistons. He said, do you realize how hard it was to put 15 pounds on Michael Jordan when you're playing basketball? You realize how hard it is to add 15 pounds in basketball when you're running nonstop?
Set up our poll question brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNewbertCollision.com. JoeNewbertCollision.com. What's the poll question, Caleb?
Should Nico just go pro? Yes, he's not made for college, or no, he's horrible. Dave really just had to throw subtle shade at Nico. You wouldn't do something like that, Dave. What's wrong with you?
I'm a bad person, but boy, do I love good content. The show broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Caleb will give us the answer to that poll question and the previous one that I thought was really good. And we're represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, TedRussellFord.net, TedRussellLincoln.net. The results in this poll are pretty good. Please vote.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location.
All right, so what is the answer to the poll question?
The answer to the poll question is hilariously, should Nico just go pro? Yes, he's not made for college, 21%. No, he's horrible, 79%. It's Dave just had to, there's no option of no, he needs to develop. It's no, he's horrible. Dave just wants Tennessee fans saying he's horrible. The same Tennessee fans that were in love with this kid 9 months ago.
Or no, not 9 months ago, 9 days ago.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, why are you going 9 months?
This is so, I'm sorry, but if for the Tennessee fans,
every bit the Lane thing all up for you. I don't think you were around for the Lane thing. This is every bit the same thing. I went to the Old City on Sunday morning and there was a burnt Nico jersey laying on the sidewalk.
I mean, okay. What about this? Maybe the Nico, does this rival when LeBron bolted Cleveland? It doesn't rival that, does it? In 2010,
Tennessee fans, it sure as heck does.
I don't think it does. I think Tennessee fans are still excited about their future this year. They don't think Cleveland knew that their team was done when LeBron left in 2010. I mean, and also Josh Heupel didn't go out and accuse Nico of quitting last season like Dan Gilbert did with LeBron and the Cavs owner did.
Okay, where are we going next? I know we've
yeah, we're going to go a little long today, guys. We got a couple more topics. We're going to talk a little bit about rules changes, and then this Lane Kiffin Theo Von interview was just too good to not talk about, guys.
It was golden. It was golden. All right, coming up, Give me 30 seconds, and I'm going to tell you why Tennessee just got a real boost from the NCAA. And boy, I don't say that every day.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vols collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute.
And here we go.
It was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Did you notice what I'm drinking, Caleb?
What are you drinking?
I added something to my grocery list. I don't know. I didn't get it before. I've been doing more grocery shopping lately. Have you ever tried this Fresca?
My wife loves Fresca.
Your wife loves Fresca, and so you do not?
I do not.
Okay. Update on the poll question. Let's go back a little bit. And then we're going to get to this rule change. It's going to be huge for the Vols. Who would have been the best pro had they been saying? Sometimes you can type things and they don't sound as bad when you type them. And then you read them, you're like, man, I'm a jerk. Because there's no, other than one maybe, there's no proof that any of these guys were clinically insane. Jalen Hurd, James Banks, Khalil McKenzie, Dustin Moore. Y'all are too young to remember Dustin Moore. But he's probably the answer. Jalen Hurd gets 37% of the vote. James Banks, 27% of the vote. Khalil McKenzie, 25% of the vote. Dustin Moore, 10% of the vote. And then the other poll question that we had out there, Caleb is the one that worded this one, and it's just mean-spirited.
I did not, but okay.
I did not. Should Nico just go pro? No, he's horrible. 75%. Yes, he's not made for college football. 24%. To me, those are kind of both the same side. No, he's horrible. Oh, so no, he's horrible. He came out.
Oh, we forgot about Jansen Jackson as a bust. That's right. He killed somebody, didn't he?
Yes. Allegedly. How surprised do you think your mom would be if she said, hey, have you seen Bob Oh, you mean your boyfriend? Oh, yeah, Bob. He's in the trunk. Fresca is blank. Fruity or awesome? The answer may be both because it's grapefruit juice. Fruity right now is leading with 92% of the vote. Awesome is 8% of the vote. Okay, you got to try Fresca. By the way, I've said that I'm giving away a book per day, and I'm going to continue to do that. And I'm sorry that we're going along, guys. I hope you hang with us. But let me throw this out there because this suggestion with the Jansen Jackson, who made the Jansen Jackson suggestion?
Colin Bartlett.
What's that?
Colin Bartlett is the one who said it.
Okay, Colin, email me, david@offthehooksports.com, and I'm hooking you up with a Celebrate 98 book. It looks like this. It reads even better. All right, Caleb. So rules changes in the NCAA are coming down. There's some that are just okay. There's one that desperately needed to be made. And I didn't really know how to fix this. And I'm not sure I like the response, but it's going to help Tennessee. So basically explain what happens when a player is injured. And the issue at hand has been you got a lot of coaches that have made, mostly Lane Kiffin, that have made a mockery of the injury situation because you will tell a guy to act like he's hurt. It happens against Josh Heupel and his offense all the time. And I would go on record. I never question a guy's toughness or injury because I don't have the ability to do that. But I'll go on record and say 75% of the time you see somebody hurt in a Tennessee game when Tennessee has the ball, 75% of the time they are not really hurt and they're trying to slow tempo. Would you agree or disagree with that?
1000% agree.
Okay, I'm not even sure. I wanted to say 90%, but I thought that was too strong. All right. So how's the new rule? And to clarify, this is not a proposal. This is a change, correct?
Yes, this has been approved. This new rule has been approved pretty much.
Okay.
This new rule, let's go ahead and break it down here. With injuries in college football. If medical personnel enters the field after the ball is spotted for the next play, the team is charged a timeout. If a team is out of timeouts, a 5-yard delay of game penalty is going to be enforced.
Okay.
Do you want me to tell you my thoughts, or do you want to get first?
Well, I just want to tell you this. Well, let's start with this. Let me tee you up. How does this help Tennessee? I think it's obvious, but how does it help Tennessee?
Oh, it's totally obvious. Obviously, Tennessee can now run its tempo if they want to.
Right. So like used to be a player would go down, he would be air quotes hurt, and then they would be able to sub all 11 guys if they wanted to. Now, Tennessee could sub as well, and I thought they were innovative in 2022 because they'd bring a double tight end look on the goal line, which is oftentimes when this happened because Tennessee would attack somebody down the field and then run tempo. Like the Princeton fan end around, part of that was because Tennessee subbed as well. But as a whole, you don't want the defense subbing in Josh Heupel's system. So now you really can't do that unless you're really hurt. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think this will force players to stay on the field when they may be hurt, and it could make the injury worse. This helps Josh Heupel. This helps Tennessee. But I think this is a totally unfair rule for college athletes.
Okay, I was actually on your side for a while because I thought, man, that's a severe penalty, a timeout or a 5-yard penalty. I thought just keep the player off the field for a drive. But Dave, I've changed, and let me tell you why I've changed. There's a very key detail here. It's if medical personnel has to enter the field after the refs spot the ball. So, if you are truly hurt, you're going to be down before the refs spot the ball. And the medical personnel can then enter the field before the ref spots the ball. If you're most of the reason this is I didn't even think about this rule until they did it. Most of these injuries being faked, guys, look at it when it happens. It happens after the ref spots the ball. It almost always happens after the ref spots the ball.
Fair point. So they will kind of stumble along. They'll get a sign from an unknown man on the sideline, and then they're like, oh, my hammy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I think that I think that the biggest thing is because it's after now. That doesn't mean that they still can't do it. You know, Lane Kiffin is already coaching his players. Man, if you're tired, go down before the ref spots the ball. Make sure you go down before the Lane Kiffin will send his medical personnel out onto the field like just randomly, won't he, Dave?
Yes.
At that point, look, but it's a lot harder now to get away with this. So I wasn't a fan of it at first because I agree. I don't believe in penalizing people for injuries because I think you are setting a bad precedent and you're going to incentivize people to play hurt.
I didn't mean to laugh at you, but Adam said I'd rather see a guy get extra hurt before I see a healthy guy cry and roll around like a baby.
Okay, this is not like we're not the Roman Colosseum gladiators. We're not seeing human beings get extra hurt.
Extra hurt is a new term. Can we use that? Extra hurt.
Oh my gosh, extra.
How hurt is he? Well, he's on the injury report as extra hurt, so he's not playing against Vanderbilt this week.
Yeah, you don't want to see that, Adam. I don't want to see a Kevin Ware or Willis McGahee injury. I'd rather see a fake injury than we'll have to look at that on my screen. You know, player with a broken leg gets up and walks and tries to run the next play.
Now, UT Pumpkin said they also need to let the player stay out for the possession. I thought that was an answer. I think that's better answer.
That seems like the best answer, but this whole after the ref spots the ball, that's a very fair rule, I think. Now, it's still a little tricky with the tempo Tennessee runs, but here's what's going to happen. A player's going to be down, because then you can go to the replay booth, Dave, because say like a player's down, the ref spots the ball, the ref rules a timeout or a delay of game penalty, you can then challenge and send the ref to the replay booth to prove that the player was down before the ref spotted the ball. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And so I think this actually works out really, really, really well long term. I think that this is better than this is a better rule than I ever even considered. So, sorry?
I hate it.
Well, you just think that, I don't know. I don't know what you think.
The only answer to this is integrity, Caleb.
Oh, wow. Integrity. Yeah, that's really going to happen.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's the only answer. Trust me, I've thought about it a lot.
This is one I guarantee you didn't think of because none of us did.
No, I've thought of penalizing them with a timeout.
No, not after the ref spots the ball, though. That big caveat changes everything.
Yeah, but ultimately, you are going to try to encourage a player to stay on the field due to injury so that his team doesn't lose the timeout. That's just a fact.
I'm not so sure on that. I got to be honest. I'm not so sure. The other part of the fake injuries, and I don't get what this is, but like, I saw where they're doing a rule where if a player on a kickoff return makes a T signal with his arms during the kick, the team gives up the right to return the kick.
Were people, I don't want to get into these other rules.
My question is, were people doing the timeout sign returning kickoffs? That makes no sense.
Remember the Dallas Cowboys were about to advance into the playoffs, or maybe they were going to beat the Detroit Lions the year that was when they played. But anyway, that they had a signal from the quarterback to Jimmy Johnson, the head coach, that was like this. And for those in our audio platforms, I apologize. I'm putting one hand in between my two fingers on the other hand. And they got charged with a timeout that they didn't mean to. So that's the one example I have of fake timeout calls.
That's kind of interesting. Maybe someone did.
And you got Troy Aikman. It made Jimmy Johnson look like a college coach that was out of his league because Troy Aikman was going, no, not a timeout. That goes way back. Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. Hook for 10% off. They've moved some stuff around. It's easier to get around, but you still have an incredible selection of merchandise that you'll be proud to wear, whether you're supporting the Diamond Vols, the basketball team, Tennessee, or whoever the quarterback might be in 2025. All right, Caleb, Lane Kiffin is always a fun topic of conversation, not just because he coached at Tennessee, but because he says interesting things. Lane Kiffin was on Theo Vaughn's show lately. I would suggest, we're not going to play a lot of it, but I would suggest that you guys watch it because Lane doesn't specify Tennessee as much, but he does talk about how he, being in the South at Ole Miss, he's slowed down a little bit. He's not always looking for the next job. Now, you and I both know he's going to take the LSU Florida job if he ever is offered. but I don't think he's gunning for it. And I think the fact that he's not Auburn's head coach is proof of that. So it's a good watch. But he said a couple of things that stood out in particular. So, Caleb, I'll let you set those up. Be sure and hit that thumbs up button, the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to this point, please do so. Caleb?
Yeah, so we're first going to talk about Lane Kiffin addressed the golf ball incident in Knoxville when a golf ball was thrown at him. I still have a conspiracy theory that he hired a fan to do that, Dave, just so he could get like press. I'm just saying, if I know Lane, I feel like Lane would do that. So here's Lane talking about the golf ball incident. Well, let's see if this will play. Come on,
Lane.
Come on, Twitter. Come on, Elon.
This hatred towards me. Like I felt like the Gladiator, the movie, you know, like they were getting ready for like a thumbs down, you know, like let's kill him. They had a real conversation with me during the week about bulletproof vests. Like, but again, like there's no way, guys, come on, man, it's football. And they're like, they had like 3 cops with me and everything. Like,
they're like, it's deer season.
Wait, a couple more real quick. Hold on.
You know, it's like a crowd.
Can I address that one first?
Yeah, sure.
They didn't ask him if he wanted a bulletproof vest.
No.
For the love of all that's holy. Maybe somebody at Ole Miss said it jokingly, but they didn't. Nobody at Tennessee in charge of security said you should wear a bulletproof vest, because that's essentially admitting that you have no security in Neyland Stadium, and it's an absolute fiasco. So that is not true. I'll text Lane right now and tell him that I heard that and I don't believe it. Go ahead.
This is Lane wanting to troll Tennessee further. Come on. He has too much fun doing it, guys. All right, so a couple more real quick. This is still sticking on that specific topic. I'm going to bring it back up again. Here's what he said a little bit later.
Like everybody didn't hate me at the beginning, but then, you know, it's like a crowd, like storm. They feel it, and then the hatred just kept building. And then it was like threw things at me, like golf ball.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like anything they could get, like mustard.
And school books, which we need in Tennessee, first of all.
They didn't have school.
Wow.
That's, what a shot he threw right there, right?
No, I'm not. Lane loves Neyland and the Vols. You can tell he misses us. Ole Miss is not on the same level as Vol Nation. I agree. I think Tennessee is one of the handful of jobs that he would bolt for in a second if Tennessee offered him the job. I still believe that. I'll believe that until my dying day. And what did he just said that about school books? In all fairness to Lane, and I know nobody wants me to defend Lane, and they just want me to rip him. He made several Southern references, not just specifically pointed at Tennessee, like how at Ole Miss he referenced I don't know, he referenced education and more. I don't want to misquote him, but he said that across the South, and that the South maybe the inference was the South isn't as smart, but they also are smart because they go at their own pace. And that allows you to be a better person and individual.
Okay, here's why it rubs the wrong way when Lane Kiffin, a California kid, says it, though, doesn't it? Like, for instance.
But if you listen to that whole thing, I mean, if I were Ole Miss, if I were one of their fans, I'm miffed. I mean, as long as he wins 10 or more games, I'm okay with it, but I'd be a little miffed. He also mentioned that Jackson Dart tried to get another year, which I didn't believe that either.
Well, okay, so what's worse, the way Lane kind of referred to the South in that way, or with Tennessee with the school books, or remember when Auburn had that fire and a bunch of books were burned at a library in the 90s, and Steve Spurrier goes, well, the real tragedy is 20 of them aren't even colored yet.
I don't.
Yeah. What's more offensive, Spurrier saying that or Lane Kiffin saying what he said?
The Spurrier one was more clever. So I would go with that.
And but no one was going to get mad because Spurrier had such a Southern accent. You couldn't accuse him of calling someone dumb because they're Southern, right? Although I think Spurrier was the most Southern accent and thought that he was way too smart to be in the South at the same time, honestly. But here's a couple more. By the way, Lane did say he loved Neyland Stadium and he loved the environment. But here's a couple more interesting ones. And I want to just Lane's trolling is not done of other coaches because he had to make fun of Brian Kelly. And,
yes. And by the way, and the Brian Kelly stuff's great. You've got to listen. By the way, 78% say Fresco's fruity, 21% say awesome. New poll question that is up. Has Lane changed? Yes, bring him back. No, still self-centered. I don't care. All right, go ahead.
All right, here's Lane Kiffin trolling Brian Kelly with the recruit when Brian Kelly did that dance. All right, let's go there. All right.
Yeah, like, well, Brian Kelly, they also put him on that Lazy Susan. Remember when he first came in? It's like, And it's a tough.
I retweeted that.
You what?
I retweeted that like when he did that thing. Yeah. He was with the quarter. It was
Look
terrible.
at that. I thought this was for a strip club, to be honest with you. I thought this was for
I think I wrote something like, do you actually know they were filming you? Like, did you put this out on purpose? Like you know they're gonna film you when you're doing this?
I thought this was a gender reveal, and I was like, well, what is it?
Yeah, and it's not like his like first one. He did it like the year before. I'm like, do you realize you're like kind of grinding on the dude?
This was also a strip club advertisement near Natchez, Mississippi.
Grinding on the dude. Man, that was a special moment.
By the way, wasn't that dude 17 at the time? So Brian Kelly grinding on the dude was a little bit inappropriate. I got one more from Lane, by the way, but like, thinking about it, it was a little bit inappropriate, wasn't it, Dave?
It was weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. Now,
another one for Lane.
Yeah, one more, and this is a more serious one, because I'm going to ask this question when I get out when we finish this. But I first want to play this real quick.
I'm the assistant. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he's the head coach.
This is Lane Kiffin talking about coaching under Nick Saban. I meant to mention that.
You know, whatever he says goes.
Oh, yeah, you're supposed to keep it classy over there.
And yes, and that's not his way. Is very like, this is the way. Like, there's not open discussions about it and stuff. And I'd worked for Pete Carroll as assistant, so that's all I knew. And it's just totally.
And to those who don't know, Pete Carroll is very much encourages individuality with everybody. And
not necessarily individuality. I mean, he's not suggesting somebody gets their hair colored, or tattoos on their face, but he likes input. I'm the same way. I run stuff past Caleb. There are times I run stuff past other people in the media, ideas that we have. I'm very much like that. I think, Caleb, you would attest to that. I don't say, that's just a dumb idea, Caleb. We're not doing that. Or like Nick Saban will literally take an offensive or defensive game plan, or would when he was a coach, on a Thursday night, tear it up and say, I'll just do this all over tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you this, Dave, because I think you think if Lane had it to do all over again, he would stay at Tennessee, right? And win Bolt. Mm-hmm. Here's one reason I think he would still do everything the way he's done it. Don't you think Lane, even though he regrets bolting Tennessee, is grateful that it led him to 3 years with Nick Saban?
Wow. I mean, I don't know. If you go through a terrible divorce and you end up with a better woman, or as good of a better woman, don't you kind of look at it, hindsight 2020, and you say to yourself, that was all worth it. That was all good. But had he stayed at Tennessee and matured at Tennessee, because the close calls he had about getting busted and getting in trouble, both via NCAA issues and off the field, which I don't really want to get into. But had he, I mean, Caleb, he could have, let's put it this way. He could have matured at Tennessee. Did he need to get fired on the tarmac at Southern California to make him more mature? Yeah, I guess we all could use some comeuppance at times. But if he's at Tennessee, I think Tennessee makes a college football playoff when it's 4 teams. I think they're in it each and every year. I think he maybe wins an SEC championship. So, I mean, I don't know. It sounds good.
How much of a better coach do you think he is, having coached under Nick Saban?
Oh, 100 times better.
Like, and
okay, you bring up a good point. Would he have been the coach he is now without the time under Nick Saban? I will give you that. I will say no. So, to be the coach he is today, he had to leave Tennessee in a lurch, go to Southern Cal, realize that sometimes the grass is always not greener on the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then get fired, which has to be humbling. And the way he got fired, which was poorly handled, even if you don't like Lane, that's not the way you fire somebody. And yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
He's a better coach now than he would have been had he been entering his 15th year at Tennessee.
Put it this way. He's still a character, and you love characters in the SEC, but he's a more refined character, I guess. He's learned how to harness and channel his like entertainment value, hasn't he? Whereas with Tennessee, he was going 130 miles an hour and not controlling his speed at all.
But let me take your line of thinking.
And I'm not just talking about in car crashes.
Right. But let me take your your line of thinking a step further. And I mean this with all due respect to the Kiffin family. Is he a more mature man, a more mature person since his dad passed away about 10 months ago, right before SEC Media Days? I mean, if that doesn't change you, I mean, he was there up until the end, is my understanding, even coached through dementia, that he was there, and that probably kept him alive a little bit longer. So, I mean, would you ever say, I lost this loved one, but it's a good thing because I became a better person? And there's a happy medium of I became a better person, but good Lord, I don't ever want to go through that again.
Yeah, but there is a I mean, the other side can happen. Look at Kanye West after losing his mom. Look at what's happened to Kanye. He didn't become a more mature person after losing his mom. We found out his mom was the only thing keeping him somewhat grounded, to a certain degree.
Some of your pop culture references I don't get, so I'm just going to have to completely.
Kanye was normal, and then his mom passed away in 2007, and every crazy antic he's ever done has been since his mom passed away. But yeah, basically like that. Lane Kiffin, but I want to say this. I think they had a tight relationship. I don't think Monty was the type of dad that kept Lane grounded, though. Does that make sense?
You can't. Like,
yeah,
you have. If you're a football coach, you're working 70 hours a week. You're at Minnesota. You're at all these other different places. You're with the Bucks, and you can't suddenly, when your son's, how old was he at Tennessee? 35-ish, 36.
Yes, about 33, 34.
Because we're the same age, so I'm trying to do the math in my head. You can't suddenly say, son, I'm going to control the direction of your life after I haven't been there for the majority of it. And I mean, I can empathize with that to some extent because I worked a lot of nights for the News Sentinel and for a radio station. So, I mean, you probably have to let your kid make a few more their decisions on their own even earlier in life. But I can tell you that from talking to Monty the night that Lane left, he was even taken aback about how upset Tennessee fans were. He had been in the NFL. Nobody burns mattresses in the streets when the Tampa Bay Bucks coach leaves, and so, or the Minnesota coach where he coached leaves. So they were all back. I'm not sure that he would have given him any other advice. I think the advice probably was, if that's really your dream job, son, go for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm still, at the end of the day, though, I think he's got some of his immaturity in him because I'm still waiting for Lane to take the Florida job and bring Ed Orgeron on staff, and it is going to be cheerleaders on campus every day. They're going to have a different girl with them every day, Lane and Ed. You know they're wingmen at bars sometimes, right?
Well, yeah, I don't think he's Joey Freshwater anymore.
He's Joey Saltwater. He's Joey Brackish Water.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Take a second and remember Banks & Jones. Whether it's criminal defense, whether it's personal injury, catastrophic issues that may have cropped up in your life, they've got over 30 employees led by T. Scott Jones, who's absolutely the best. He goes to trial, or other attorneys say they won't. I've talked to people who've gone through a similar issue, and those that have gone with Banks & Jones, those that haven't, and they faced a far different scenario. Those that went with Banks & Jones, a much better scenario than others that haven't done the same. The show is broadcast weekdays at 10 a.m. from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. No tariffs on those cars. TedRussellFord.net, TedRussellLincoln.net. And East Tennessee's largest volume dealer means they have the car that you want, whether it's new, pre-owned, certified, or whether it's a used vehicle. They got 3 different levels there you can choose from. You'll be happy. I'm going to go jump in my Jeep, drop the top down, thanks to Ted Russell Ford and Ted Russell Lincoln on Parkside Drive and Kingston Pike. For Caleb Calhoun, I want to take a second to thank everybody for a huge monstrous week. I know there was plenty to talk about, but you chose to go here. A lot of you did, for your information and your entertainment. We appreciate it. Record numbers. And I know that's because Nico's left. It's not like Caleb and I started going topless and that brought everybody in. But I want to thank you very much. We hope
that's a good idea.
Let me go ahead and pull this up. So we want you to be regular listeners. So hit that subscribe button, and that would be fantastic. Some big announcements coming up on the program. Some more regular guests, in addition to Jimmy Himes each and every Wednesday, Will West each and every Friday. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Have a great weekend, everybody. happy Good Friday, happy Easter as well.